I'm going to start with the Emmett Fox reading for today, uh, which fits right in with what we're talking about. So he was in the dealing with the Ten Commandments. He was on the fourth commandment, and he wanted us to start by reading Exodus 20:8 through 11. And let me pull that. Here's the Bible. So 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the sojourner who dwells in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the seas, and all the things that are in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it. So what Emmett Fox wrote was, this commandment about the Sabbath day was given to the people at the time of their leaving Egypt and going into the desert. And on the surface, it meant what is said for that age. It was a wonderful thing in Moses' day to insist that everyone set aside one day a week to think about God, or at least to oblige him to stop his secular activities. No, I think this line is very important. No rule can make a man religious or give him faith, but it can help. Like all the other commandments, this one is instruction in seeking the presence of God everywhere, particularly where the trouble seems to be. Where there is fear and doubt, he brings faith. Where there is lack, he brings abundance. But here in this commandment, about the Sabbath day, there is a still deeper meaning. When you are praying every day and recognizing that God is working in you and in all your affairs, there will be a sense in which every day will be a Sabbath, because for you, every day will be a holy day. One of the most wonderful things about the Bible teaching is that we get rid of the distinction between the sacred and the secular. That is one of the most important steps in the whole history of the soul. God is present everywhere. For those who understand Jesus' teaching, it is always the Sabbath day, and the place whereon they stand is holy ground. So before I read this in preparation, I was thinking about, and have been thinking about, retreats. Um, here in Fox's reading, he's encouraging us to build a spiritual habit of making every day a Sabbath for ourselves. And this is a great goal, but it's easier to accomplish some years than others. And as we've all know right now, we're living in a time where our world is just filled with so much hatred, so much fear, so much anxiety, uncertainty, to say nothing of everyday physical and emotional dangers. And in my practice and just dealing with people in general, I'm seeing so many people who are feeling utterly depleted, beaten down, even powerless and hopeless, not just about the world, but even in their own lives. And the end result of this is often a loss of the sense of Sabbath peace, even on the official Sabbath day. Uh, we find ourselves tempted to slide lower and lower in frequencies on the Hawkins scale. To recap, for those of you who are not familiar, 0 to 1,000 is the Hawkins scale. 250 and above is getting closer and closer to Godhead, 1,000 being having achieved pure divine love. 250 and below, you're sinking more and more into, I don't know a right word for it, ungodliness, unwellness, unhealthiness, uh, any of those. And G.K. Chesterton, who wrote the Father Brown series, has Father Brown talking about this, that it's easy for a person to maintain an equilibrium of good, which on the Hawkins scale would be somewhere above 250. But take that first step downward, and it's easier and easier to keep sliding downward, and harder to reverse the momentum and get ourselves back up to the equilibrium of a higher energy on the Hawkins scale. And over the last couple or 3 weeks, dealing with my lift clients and some of the others who've been talking to me, I have found myself several times suggesting to them that they create an opportunity to go on a retreat, or to retreat, if you will. As I was researching for this talk, a retreat sanctuary had a phrase that really stuck out at me. They wrote, "If you need a pause from life and a chance to regather yourself at God's feet." And I suggest keep that in the back of your mind. Every one of us here is exposed to the incredible negative energies going on right now. And if you find it getting to you, before we started, I was talking with one of the folks here about a friend of mine who works in a hospital in a healing position, but the hospital is so corruptly run that she calls me and feels utterly defeated. Doesn't enjoy going in there, doesn't like the energy. And she being one of us in terms of sensitive, she feels the toxic energy floating around. It gets to her. And so we had a conversation about find a way to get your kids and your husband somewhere, get yourself to a retreat. Day or 2, 3 days, whatever you can manage. So let's back off, just in case some of you aren't familiar with the whole concept of what retreats do. And I found this definition. What does it mean to go on a retreat? It's not quite like a holiday, but it is a break from usual work. The difference is in the purpose. The idea of going on a retreat has spiritual origins. It is the physical removal of self from normal life to allow time for contemplation. The idea might be to reflect on character, purpose, values, motivation, or a combination of similar things. A lot of people go on organized retreats at special centers and with groups, but it can also be done individually. Now, that hits home because with Mary and Paul gone at a dance workshop and Phyllis at a retreat, this has been my retreat. I've seen one person for 5 minutes this weekend. I've had 3 phone calls, 2 of which I got rid of instantly, and the third one within 5 minutes. And the rest of the time, there's been no sound, no radio, no television, nothing, just me and silence and doing what needed to be done. I feel better. And I trust that Phyllis will be feeling better when she comes back too. Now, this definition is very clear. A retreat is not fleeing in the face of adversity or running away from trouble. Rather, it is separating yourself from all the stimuli. Most of the retreats that I'm familiar with, by the way, have major amounts of silence, of not talking built into them. That is one of the ways of clearing out our own internal underbrush. So Fox, in another writing, talks about the reason that we're here. And this, to me, relates to keeping retreat as an option for us. The reason that you are here is that you may develop spiritually. And the way to do that is to meet the challenge of practical life. You do not develop spiritually by running away from life into some sheltered retreat. And I have known people who've done that, by the way. But here he's not talking about retreats. But monitor yourself. Are you running away, or are you seeking an opportunity to reconnect with the divine and with the joy of your own Sabbath? Richard Rohr talks, actually it wasn't Richard Rohr, it's a retreat center called Faith in the Unfolding. And unfolding, by the way, is something that Emmett Fox talks about, that in our spiritual walk, nothing is static, and we need to become comfortable with allowing the unfolding of our walk and of our understandings. And a retreat with its silence and with its community as well, which we'll get to in a bit, is one place where we can stop enough to allow unfolding. And this particular place writes how they offer reflective teaching, guided prayer times, and journaling. Now, something I hadn't known about was the difference between Western Christianity and African Christianity in the early parts of the Christian faith and the Orthodox faith. Let's see, the two of us here used to come to the live church here. One of our speakers then talked about how the West had lost something precious, Western church, that the Orthodox church still had. And that was the connection with something outside the rational being. The Orthodox church is comfortable with the mystic, with the beyond knowing, which is what you will encounter in a good retreat. The Western church more and more got rid of that in favor of the intellectual understanding of the divine. But the intellectual understanding of the divine handicaps us if that's all we allow. Spiritual healing doesn't come. Miraculous physical healing doesn't come from intellectual understanding. It comes from the knowing that is beyond knowing. And I came across an article that talked about how Christians and monasticism, more orthodox monasticism, flourished in Africa, particularly in the 5th century, where Christian converts would go to live in an isolated community where everyone was in constant meditation. And then city dwellers, learning of the peace there, would come out and form communities around it. It wasn't too long after the 5th century that one of the popes started slaughtering them all, because, of course, it wasn't his kind of Christianity. So when you move into a quiet retreat, what happens? Richard Rohr talks about it, and he emphasizes the joy of silence. And I'm going to quote some things here. He's talking about both the retreat and also being in service. His center is called the Center for Action and Contemplation because, in his view, you must have both. One to be of use in this world, and the other to maintain your connection, if you will, your Sabbath with everybody. He writes, without silence, we do not really experience our experiences. We may serve others and have many experiences, he writes, but without silence, nothing has the power to change us, to awaken us, to give us the joy that the world itself cannot give. I'm going to read this again because I think it's so important. Without silence, and I'm not saying you have to go on a retreat for silence. I'm here, but I've been silent all weekend. But without silence, and I will say without being comfortable in silence, because I think we know plenty of folks who cannot stand a pause in conversation, as an example. But without silence, nothing has the power to change us, to awaken us, to give us that joy that the world itself cannot give. To live in the primordial foundational being of silence itself creates a kind of sympathetic resonance for what is right in front of us. You do not hear silence, he writes, but it is that by which you do hear. You cannot capture silence. It captures you. Silence is a kind of thinking that is not thinking. It's a kind of thinking that mostly sees, contemplates. He argues that silence thus is a form of alternate consciousness. And a writer who's part of one of the Trappist monasteries writes, many benefits of spiritual retreats are such things as renewal of the heart and the inner being, seeing the world around and within new eyes, and a closer personal union with God, or he writes, or your higher power, or simply humankind or nature, however you define this thing that is bigger than the rest of us, that lives within us, and that is us. Or we might define it, as we've been doing recently, as God stuff, as we're all star stuff. And all that fits. There's a benefit, he writes, overall to slowing down and quieting both inner and outer voices. It can elicit health benefits, and it can elicit greater peace. Then I looked at some of the topics for the Faith in Unfolding website as a way of perhaps giving some insight to what you might find should you choose to go on retreat, as a way of regaining your daily Sabbath for yourself. One title was Accepting Your Now, Trusting the Silence. Pools of water, an opportunity to take a few steps out of life, and coming home to ourselves. Now, on a more sales-like approach to retreats, a retreat leader by the name of Lisa Dunford Dickman listed these possible results for you. Take time for you. Have an adventure. Shake things up. Recharge in nature. Draw closer to the divine. Align with your inner self. Improve your health. Make new friends. And I would expand that a bit. Make new friends who are spiritually sensitive and walking with you. Rest and rejuvenate. Discover something about yourself. Raise your vibration. We've already talked about that. Heal past wounds. Push past your comfort zone. Learn new things. Consciously create your future. I found in an AA website some discussion of people who had gone on retreats, and I want to mention what three of them found. One wrote, "I went to a silent meditation retreat for 10 days once. I learned more than I ever had before learned. I spent a bit of time at a monastery. The monks would have set silent days and maybe an hour silence in chapel. It's a powerful thing. Many things have been revealed to me in periods of silence and prayer." And I have a friend who goes to a monastery in Kentucky for a weekend silent retreat every year. Awesome things are revealed when he just sits quiet and prays. So, presenting all this to you, I encourage you this week, evaluate how many Sabbath days each week you are enabling yourself to live in, to feel holy in, to joy in. And think about how your life in general is unfolding and whether you are enabling yourself to stay safe in this very turbulent, tumultuous time. Clayton Christensen, who was a very innovative thinker in many ways, wrote something that I still think about. He wrote, "Think about the metric by which your life will be judged, and make a resolution to live every day so that in the end, your life will be judged a success by you." And from Emmett Fox's reading at the beginning, I suggest that part of your metric be, how big a portion of my life can I be living in a Sabbath? And was I successful in keeping myself there? And then I'll close this by saying to you from me, don't let the current worldly woes damage your ability to live in Sabbath days. And if damaged, repair it. Do explore the occasional retreat as a way to repair whatever damage occurs. Those are my thoughts for the day. Anyone with something to contribute?
Hello. So this is the fourth sermon I've heard in 4 days, and every single one focused on the same theme. And it's really amazing to hear that theme expressed in 4 different ways. And Brian, I have to congratulate you because yours was by far the best sermon. I gave mine on Thursday. I wish I would have given mine last, so I could have picked up nuggets from the other 3, but this was wonderful. One of the quotes that I shared in my sermon was, now Jesus didn't actually say these words, but they were conveyed in his teachings. Be in the world, not of it. Meaning, you can't hide from the world that we live in, but don't get sucked up into the chaos. I mean, everything that you've talked about. And I would love to go on a spiritual retreat. They seem to be hard to find. I've done them in the past, but where I'm located now, they seem to be hard to find. So I might have to just do it in my house, like what you're doing.
Well, that can be done. Just turn everything off. But what you might do is you might email Phyllis asking her to notify you when she gets notified of retreats, because she's got, I don't know, half a dozen different organizations now that tell her of
Oh,
retreats.
okay.
That goes for all of you. If you want to know where they are, mayhap there's a treat where several from our community could go together or meet together, and it would be a community within a community.
That would be really nice.
Okay, yeah, just email her.
And I'll let her know of a couple of places that I know of as well,
Yeah.
in case she's interested. But thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll try to build a constant contact
Mm.
connection. Okay, Lori Kay is next.
This brings to the fore a lot of different thoughts. One of them is when I first met Amma in 1988, there were maybe 15 to 30 people. And it was only silence. There was no music, there was no stuff to buy. It was the most biblical feeling environment. No words were spoken. And people were pointed to by Amma, and then that person would stand up and go up to her and get down on their knees and be held on her lap, face down on her, in her lap, across her lap. And it was the most beautiful, most profound experience. Well, over the years, as she became known and all of that, now it's very noisy. Now it's music, and there's a bookshop, which means there's lots of selling going on. It's all goes to her, whatever. So I really appreciate you talking about the silence and how sacred it is. I find it difficult to sit with myself without tuning into Amma. I just find that it's not a natural. And that brings me to the second thing, which is we talk a lot about aligning with the divine and about going into the sacred and all of that. And there's two questions to that. One is, how do we do it? And the second question is, what do we know what we're trying to get, or are we simply pushing ourselves to do something that we think we're supposed to get a reward? I think it bears looking into, because we have been drenched in dogma for so long that we just assume that the things we say are understood, and they're not. They're just not. And so it can easily become for me, a self-punishment if I sit there and I'm just like, I've got to align. So it's an interesting journey, this.
You raised something. Let me see if I can find it. Where Emmett Fox says that you cannot develop spiritually through here it is. Nor can you grow in spiritual stature by gaining your point through willpower.
Absolutely. And then there's one more thing that you just brought up for me too. You kept saying, we're feeling the negativity of these times. Well, we have the power to bring in, through visualization, through choice, through practice, to actually start to break up the darkness, to break up that negativity, because the only reason we're feeling it is because it has a resonance of some kind. And if we all figured out how to do this, then we could change our world overnight. And so it bears being something that we seek, that we seek with curiosity, and instead of like, well, I don't know how. Forget that. I wonder how. Like, if God really is all things, that has to include me. How do I find that? How do I align with it? Yeah. And I don't think we should be lazy about it. I think at this point we really need to get into it.
Well, and part of it is being able to step outside the thinking. That's the whole trap.
No.
Welcome back.
No, it's not. Oh, hello. People in back of you.
Yeah, they just got
It's
in.
really, it's, and it's tricky because it's not about stepping outside of anything. It's really not. It's about letting yourself be lifted by thoughts that feel just a little better. You don't have to get outside. The minute you try to get away from something, you're increasing the power of the thing you're trying to get away
The
from.
rubber band effect.
What you resist persists,
That's it.
like Gary Pennington said often.
Yes.
Okay.
And so becoming aware of what we do that does cause that can be done mentally or can be done emotionally, that recognition. And then we
Okay.
can stop.
Okay, Liz has her hand up, and then we'll go to Lori and oh gosh, whatever your name is.
Ellie,
Ellie, thank you. Liz,
Thank you,
go ahead.
Brian. That was really very good. And it reminded me of how irritated my father would get, because he was a man of great silence, spent a lot of time in silence, reading the Bible and things like that. And I was a constant talker, especially when I was a teenager. And now things have really changed, because now I seek the silence, and that constant, noise that is no longer appealing to me at all. So, thank you. That was really very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Lori and Ellie.
I did.
There are words from the divine that says, that he'll give a shalom that the world doesn't give. And shalom is that deep place that you can go in your mind or in your environment to where you can just be in silence. Meditative, like music, stepping outside of the hustle, the bustle, the chaos, and you can just be. The divine actually said that with Mary and Martha, if you remember the story. Martha was bustling around, trying to get the housework done, trying to serve guests, and Mary put herself, stepping outside the hustle and the bustle. She sat at his feet. And Martha was upset. Oh no, she can't do that. She can't step outside of this. She can't do that. And Messiah said, she has chosen the better part. This will not be taken away from her. So yes, you can step out of the chaos. You can change your mindset. We have the power of life and death in our tongue to change our future consciously. What's here is here. The power of life and death is in our tongue. Where's it here? Before, it's up here. So yes, you can step outside of the environment, the circumstance, the chaos to be there.
Okay, thank you. You have something, Lori?
No.
Okay, very good. Leah is next.
Yes, I like what you said, and Lori K, because what it is, there's several different things. The energy shift, instead of focusing on the negative, focus on, okay, there is negative, but what energy are you putting into it? Are you putting love into it? Or are you allowing that negativity to be a part of your life? That's why some of us choose not to listen to the news, because they're feeding you that fear. And as long as they're feeding you on that fear, they've got control over you. Whereas if you say, nah, don't think so. And what Ellie had to say about what Mary did, she didn't listen to all that negative, oh, you have to do it this way, or it should be that way, blah, blah, blah. She did what she felt came from her heart, and she went to the place of love and peace. And I like what Matt Kahn still sticks with me. The only time he'll watch the news, because he says, well, then I know where to send my love. If I don't listen to it, how am I going to send my love? And I like that because it's true. If you hear something negative, send it your love because it's got no control over you. You're able to go through it. You're able to be of the world, but not be in the world. Yeah, there's this and that. But remember too, energy is changing. More light is coming stronger and more of it. But for the darkness to be, it needs the light shown on it. And the darkness does not appreciate that. So it will do whatever it can to to take out your light. Distinct, certain words I can't say anymore. It would, snuff out the light because otherwise, how's it going to thrive? And how are you going to snuff out the darkness to let your light and everybody else's light shine brighter? As if you just give it more love. And it starts with the love inside yourself. Whether you silently feel it or tell yourself, I love you, Leah. I love you, love you, love you. And give yourself, as you know with Lift, give yourself that hug. And it's going to be all right. So just take it, live it, love it, be it. Be that light. Thank you.
Amen, sister. It reminds me of Norman Vincent Peale. He talked about how when a situation would come up, he'd send what he called a lightning bolt prayer of love. Boom! And then he'd go about his business. Lori, you had something to contribute? Lori R.
Yes, I wanted to say this reminds me of relationship again. I think a lot of how we deal with things in our life, and when you referred tonight about that going to that place, a lot of it has to do with whether we have a relationship or not with the divine or things that surround the divine. And a lot of times, I think our retreats are necessary for us to find that intimacy again and find where we lost it and how do we get back to it. But I often, the first place I go is always to relationship.
Thank you. Anybody else? Leah again?
Yeah. One more thing that always stayed with me, stuck with me, was the Dalai Lama, because he doesn't listen to the news. And they're like, well, how do you happen to know about what's going on in the world? He goes, if I'm meant to know something, I will be told it. And it's true because people around him or whatever, he might hear, somebody talking at the next table, whatever, mention this, and he finds out. And that's like when Trump got shot at, whatever, and everything, just send him love. There you go. But I didn't know until I think 2 days somebody was talking about it. It's like, he got shot? They're like, yeah. Oh, okay. It didn't stop him from trying to be president. So I was like, okay, just send it love. And that's what Larry K does. I think almost every Monday, pray or do have that intention where whatever's best for the world. When it comes to politics, because I've heard it more than once, there's 50 countries going through elections this year. So it's not just America, it's also the UK and every place else. And people, there's been other assassinations and threats and what have you. So send everybody, the whole world, your love. And may the best person be with us that needs to help us get where we need to go, whether it's in politics or not. May the best person win for our best and highest good. That's all we can ask for.
Okay, let's move on to our silence. We thank you, God, for having brought us together today, for helping each of us to come closer to being with you, to feeling you, to being in you. We thank you for guiding our feet as we depart from here to do whatever it is we are to do in service on your behalf to build ourselves to more closely replicate your divine love. Give us more wisdom as we walk this week, dear God, and guide us back here again next Sunday so that we can share and grow and love together. We give you full gratitude for all the good in our lives and for the protection you provide us. We say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we all say, amen.
So it is.
And so it is.